15 U.S.C. 1692 L. Section 814. And Administrative Enforcement A. Compliance with this title shall be enforced by the Commission, except to the extent that enforcement of the requirements imposed under this title is specifically committed to another agency under subsection B. For purpose of the exercise by the Commission of its functions and powers under the Federal Trade Commission Act, a violation of this title shall be deemed an unfair or deceptive act or practice in violation of that act. All of the functions and powers of the Commission under the Federal Trade Commission Act are available to the Commission to enforce compliance by any person with this title, irrespective of whether that person is engaged in commerce or meets any other jurisdictional tests in the Federal Trade Commission Act, including the power to enforce the provisions of this title in the same manner as if the violation had been a violation of a Federal Trade Commission trade regulation rule. B. Compliance with any requirements imposed under this title shall be enforced under 15 U.S.C. 1692 L. 1 Section 8 of the Federal Deposit Insurance Act, in the case of a. National banks, by the Comptroller of the Currency. B. Member banks of the Federal Reserve System other than national banks, by the Federal Reserve Board. And C. Banks the deposits or accounts of which are insured by the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation other than members of the Federal Reserve System, by the Board of Directors of the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation. 2. Section 5D of the Home Owners Loan Act of 1933, Section 407 of the National Housing Act, and Section 6(1) and 17 of the Federal Home Loan Bank Act, by the Federal Home Loan Bank Board acting directing or through the Federal Savings and Loan Insurance Corporation, in the case of any institution subject to any of those provisions. 3. The Federal Credit Union Act, by the Administrator of the National Credit Union Administration with respect to any federal credit union. 4. Subtitle 4 of Title 49, by the Interstate Commerce Commission with respect to any common carrier subject to such subtitle. 5. The Federal Aviation Act of 1958, by the Secretary of Transportation with respect to any air carrier or any foreign air carrier subject to that act. And 6. The Packers and Stockyards Act, 1921 except as provided in Section 406 of that act, by the Secretary of Agriculture with respect to any activities subject to that act. C. For the purpose of the exercise by any agency referred to in subsection B of its powers under any act referred to in that subsection, a violation of any requirement imposed under this title shall be deemed to be a violation of a requirement imposed under that act. In addition to its powers under any provision of law specifically referred to in subsection B, each of the agencies referred to in that subsection may exercise, for the purpose of enforcing compliance with any requirement imposed under this title, any other authority conferred on it by law, except as provided in subsection D. D. Neither the Commission nor any other agency referred to in subsection B may promulgate trade regulation rules or other regulations with respect to the collection of debts by debt collectors as defined in this title. 15 U.S.C. 1692 M. Section 815. Reports to Congress by the Commission A. Not later than 1 year after the effective date of this title and at 1-year intervals thereafter, the Commission shall make reports to the Congress concerning the administration of its functions under this title, including such recommendations as the Commission deems necessary or appropriate. In addition, each report of the Commission shall include its assessment of the extent to which compliance with this title is being achieved and a summary of the enforcement actions taken by the Commission under Section 814 of this title. B. In the exercise of its functions under this title, the Commission may obtain upon request the views of any other federal agency which exercises enforcement functions under Section 814 of this title. 15 U.S.C. 1692 and Section 816. Relation to state laws. This title does not annul, alter, or affect, or exempt any person subject to the provisions of this title from complying with the laws of any state with respect to debt collection practices, except to the extent that those laws are inconsistent with any provision of this title, and then only to the extent of the inconsistency. For purposes of this section, a state law is not inconsistent with this title if the protection such law affords any consumer is greater than the protection provided by this title. 15 U.S.C. 1692 Section 817. Exemption for state regulation. The Commission shall by regulation exempt from the requirements of this title any class of debt collection practices within any state if the Commission determines that under the law of that state that class of debt collection practices is subject to requirements substantially similar to those imposed by this title, and that there is adequate provision for enforcement.